few minutes. We are live. All right, we are live on Zoom and we are good to go on YouTube. So with that,
All right, we'll go ahead and call to order the December 8th, 2021 Rockbridge County Planning Commission Board meeting. And calling roll, we have Commissioner Member Hennis present. Commission Member Hines is present. Commission Member Lucas is absent. Commission Member Whitmore is present. Commission Member McLaughlin is present. So we have a quorum. Please bear with me as I have to read all of this, and I will do it as quickly and succinctly as possible. Please note, take notice that the November 10th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting will be, that's the December 8th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting will be held electronically pursuant to continuity of government ordinance effective on October 6, 2021, due to the threats posed by COVID-19 pandemic to the health, safety, and welfare of the public. While some commission members may participate remotely, staff will be presenting as normal in the Board of Supervisors meeting room at 150 South Main Street, Lexington 24450. In addition to citizens attending the meeting in person, citizens have several options to view or participate in the Zoom meeting webinar as described below. We'll do our best to take citizen comment remotely, and there are two options for citizens to offer comment. One, to join the Rockbridge County Planning Commission Zoom webinar. The link is available on the county website to copy into the address line on your browser. Or two, to join by telephone, and you may dial into one of the numbers listed on the county website. The webinar ID and password are there for your convenience. Citizens wishing to simply view the meeting live or after the fact can do so on the Rockbridge County Planning Commission YouTube channel, also available on the county website. If you wish to make a citizen comment as a Zoom meeting participant, you will use the raise your hand feature. You can press the raise hand button on the bottom of your Zoom window or press *9 if you're calling in by telephone. So now at this time, we'll go ahead and proceed with the meeting. At this time, we'll take any citizen comments on any issue not on tonight's agenda. Are there any comments of anybody present? Is there anybody electronic?
we will recognize anyone with any citizen comments at this time. With that being said, if you would like to make a citizen comments online, now is the appropriate time to raise your hand for anything not on the agenda. Not seeing any, turn it over.
Okay, we'll move on to the approval of the November 11th minutes. Any comments?
Good. I make a motion that we approve the minutes as submitted.
We have a motion.
I second.
We have a motion, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, number 4. I don't know how to do this, Chris, but this is my moment.
Band-Aid off.
My moment to say that I will be retiring from the Planning Commission at the end of this meeting. It's been a long ride, a good ride. I've enjoyed the time, and I'm most grateful to all the support that I've had, particularly from the Office of Community Development, Vicki, and the Board of Supervisors. And thank you all for a great ride. It's been good, but it is time.
And we certainly appreciate your years of service with the Planning Commission as chair and other roles with the Planning Commission.
So somebody else will get to have the fun now. So, okay, that Band-Aid ripped off. Now we'll go to the next Band-Aid that needs ripping off. Chris, do you want to do this?
Yes, sir. That's fine. So it's with a heavy heart that I have to announce my end of employment here at Rockbridge County. I will also be going on to pursue a different employment opportunity and try and pursue higher education, a better opportunity for me. I shouldn't say better, but a better opportunity to employ to do higher education. it's been a fantastic opportunity working here for the Planning Commission and then the Rockbridge County Administration and serving Rockbridge County. And I wish you all the best of luck. And I want to thank you, Mr. McLaughlin, for your years of service. Appreciate it.
I have one more brief announcement. When it rains, it pours around here, as everyone knows. Brandy Flint, we're very excited to announce that Brandy Flint, the previous business development assistant with the Office of Community Development, has successfully gotten the Director of Economic Development job. And so with that, next month, it will be interesting in the Office of Community Development. But we will, just for your information, we have started to advertise the zoning technician job. We certainly appreciate Chris's time here. He was instrumental in the time he was here. We were sorely missed for sure. Same with Brandy. Continue looking forward to working with Brandy in her new role, of course. But with that being said, those are, I think, all the announcement that I can handle it at one time. So we'll go on to the next meeting.
Well, Moose, as we get to have gotten to know you as Moose, to differentiate between the two Chris's, thank you for everything that you've done. You've been a real boon to us, and you will be sorely missed by Rockbridge County. And we will miss you personally as well as professionally. And Chris Sladen, you are now chief cook, bottle washer, floor sweeper, trash can emptier. You get to do everything.
You just stick in the office.
It's interesting last month this time. It'll be even more interesting next month this time. So we'll take it as it comes.
Bless you all. Thank you so much. Next we'll move on to the Board of Supervisor report. Mr. Sladen.
Yes, at their last meeting, the Board of Supervisors approved 2 special event venues. That's the one associated with the Weatherlys, Echo Adesso, off of Bourne Grant Road. And then the second special exception was Mr. Hank Leach on South Buffalo. Both of those were recommended both of one slight modification to the Echo Adesso conditions. The Board of Supervisors did remove the condition that stated the dark sky compliance. So after some research, I had some concerns I expressed at the Planning Commission meeting, but after research on what exactly dark sky guidelines were, they were exactly that, guidelines. They do have a draft ordinance, but as far as their guidelines, it was unenforceable guidelines, if you will. Turn lights off when not needed, light only areas that need to be lit, those type of things. They did have a draft ordinance that we could adopt, but it's very similar to our existing lighting ordinance. And of course, that part stayed in the conditions. Mr. Leach, they approved as per your recommendations with no changes. And both rezonings, that would be the Baker and the Voss and Mullum rezonings from residential to agricultural in the Poplar Hill. Both of those were approved as recommended by the commission.
Thank you. Next, we'll move to the first item of business for tonight. We'll have a public hearing for the Jeremiah and Sarah Holland. So, Mr. Sladen, if you want to.
Yes, and just like normal, I do have a brief PowerPoint presentation for both these. The Hollands are in attendance this evening. That'd be Jeremiah and Sarah. With that, bear with me here on sharing my screen. All right. As indicated, this is a public hearing for a special exception permit. In this particular case, it is for a campground in the agricultural zoning district, and more particularly the agricultural and general use zoning district. The property is located at 280 Rosalie Drive. That's a private road that's off of Borden Grant, off of Timber Ridge. North side of Timber Ridge, 716. Property is owned by Jeremiah Holland. Located in the Henry Hill West subdivision that was approved in 2008. Tax map number associated with the application is 52.23-26A and consists of 8.79 acres per tax records. Again, this is located and surrounded by the A2 agricultural and general use district. Currently, there is a one single family dwelling on the property with associated structures. The special exception proposal itself, again, it's for a special exception for a campground in the A2 zoning district. The applicants have constructed a canvas TP tent and proposing to rent it out to campers through the Airbnb website and possibly other means. There's no proposed water and sewer or electrical hookups will be available to the said campsites. Porta johns will be provided on site. Current plan is only to have one campsite, but they would like to expand up to 3 campsites in the future. As far as the proposed conditions, and these are slightly different than the one that are in your package. In this particular case, we did not propose substantial compliance with the site plan presented. We do have the location of the existing tent, but it is uncertain on the proposed expansion plans. But number 2 somewhat takes care of that as far as the total number of camping sites. But with that, I'll go through the proposed conditions that could be utilized through the special exception process. Number 1, campground is limited to primitive camping only, no motorhomes, tow behind campers such as pop-up camper, toy haulers, teardrop trailers, stand-up trailers, etc., or other recreational vehicles permitted. Campground is limited to a total of 3 primitive camping sites. Campground is limited to blank number of vehicles, not to exceed blank number of people, and that's always something that the Planning Commission likes to discuss and insert those numbers. And approval contingent upon final VDOT, fire and rescue management, and health department approvals. With that, the fire and rescue chief, Nathan Ramsey, went out there today. We'll get a report from him most likely by the end of the week, but he did confirm via phone call that there were no obstacles or no concerns that he had. It's a good road going up to the proposed campground. There's no bridges, there's no overhanging trees, the normal things that the fire and EMS looks for. Mr. Holland and Mrs. Holland have met with VDOT and gotten a preliminary approval. I believe there are some work to do, but they'll explain that. But site distance usually is the biggest issue, and that is achievable in this area. With that being said, I would like to stop sharing my screen and turn it over to the applicants, Jeremiah and Sarah Holland.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
It's a big deal. I appreciate y'all hearing this this evening. Not many people know, but I'm a disabled veteran, Marine Corps veteran, 20 years, PTSD. Our property, we take a lot of stock in our property, and we love and care for our property. It's become kind of a sanctuary for me. What started all of this is it's become a kind of a sanctuary for other veterans as well. I apologize, I'm a little uneasy in public, so just bear with me.
Basically, everything Chris said is what is planned. We put in there up to 3 just in case we wanted to expand, but at this point, we really don't have plans to expand. I mean, it's kind of laughable to call it a campground because it's a single tent, but we didn't fit in a box. So that's why we're before you asking for a campground permission. We do currently rent it out on Airbnb, and over the course of the last year, it's become very evident that this is something that people need. They need an escape from reality, and this gives them just that. They can come out, they can take their masks off, they can breathe easy, they can experience our small town and have a little bit of normalcy, and that's all we really want to be able to provide.
So we cherish our privacy as well, and that's we're not expanding to a
We
campground.
don't want toy haulers or nonsense. So, I mean, we have trails that we walk on, and we have 2 small children that we homeschool. So we just really want to be able to maintain what we're currently doing so that I don't have to work full time and I can take care of him and I can take care of the kids. And that's what Airbnb has allowed us to do. Thank you.
And we reassured all of our neighbors that it's not a bunch of rowdy campers that are coming in. We have pretty good understanding neighbors. It's good we have a really tight community. So.
Any questions?
I have a couple of questions. One is I'm reading over and I just want to understand. It was talking about, it says the Porta John will be serviced as needed and will adhere to the distance requirements of no further than 200 feet of a campsite and no closer than 30 feet of a campsite. I'm just confused. One thing says 200 feet.
No further away than 200 and no closer than 30. So it'll be somewhere in between there,
Pretty good.
wherever we can put it that is convenient to the people who will be
Okay.
servicing it.
And the other question had to do with trash. So you don't have any receptacles on the site and
No, we're county, so people, there will be a sign, according to ordinance, and what I talked to, Eric, was that we'd have to have a sign that said water's not provided because we're a primitive campground. You have to bring your own water. People will know that ahead of time. And then trash, they will have to remove their own trash.
I just was worried about, sometimes if there's not receptacles around, people just throw it right out the
I mean,
car
we're
on the way.
We're happy to collect it, but we were told we can't collect it because we don't have trash removal.
We're-
So
We're avid recyclers. as
I-
well, so.
I'm happy to let them continue to put their trash in our recycling and our trash, and we'll take it to the county dump like we have been doing.
Mhm.
But I was told that we weren't allowed to do that because we don't have someone come pick up our trash. So I will leave that up to you. I
Okay.
mean, I think it's better for us to make sure that it gets where it goes, but that's
Right.
you guys' choice.
Yeah, sure.
So.
That was just my, so many people, it's easy to throw it in the back of your car, but they don't want to ride for wherever they're going for 2 hours. So they don't know where our receptacles are, they don't know where to
Probably can't
dispose
use
of
them
it.
either,
They
right?
don't have county.
Right? They don't have a
Can't use
county
them,
sticker.
so-
So I'm just, that's my big concern
No,
We
there.
have no
It's-
problem collecting
I mean,
trash.
I'm happy to do that if you guys are all right with us doing that without having.
Which is what you've been doing
You've been
currently.
doing it, yeah.
And I
We-
guess
we
the other,
should have all the recycling activities. I mean,
how many vehicles are you thinking? I mean, I was thinking, you might
Yeah,
need two per
people stay.
tent. So,
Yeah, two people. So, I mean,
6.
on very rare occasions, two people will drive individual cars. Usually it's one car.
So if we are looking at the potential of 3 sites and potentially 6 vehicles,
I mean, I would say
I'm
that
very
would be
bad.
fair. I would say probably 3 or 4 at the most, honestly.
I think we'd be generous and put
Be
it at
generous to
6.
put 2, yeah.
I would
Put
say
it at
2
6.
per
For a
just to
campsite.
cover yourself and
And how,
not to exceed. And I was thinking 4 people per tent. Is that 12?
I mean,
um,
right now the TP has a single bed, so,
it's
or a double
Two.
bed, sorry. I mean, it's a queen, but
So you're thinking like 6, 2 per tent. 2 per
Yes,
tent. If
2
you had
people per
3,
tent, sorry,
so if you
yes.
ended up with 3 tents.
yeah,
trying
so
to-
six,
it might be
six
someone
people.
with a
Okay.
younger child. So
And
I-
I mean, if someone has a little kid, there.
I would just do 2 per site, 4 per person. And then
I
that
would
way,
do-
if you have a smaller kid or.
if there are kids involved, I think we want to give them the,
That's why I was saying 4, because I figured you
4,
might put the
yeah.
kids in a,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if we-
I just think we need to
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
longer
Four-
term.
Four per site, I think, I would go.
That's 12 people, 6 vehicles and 12 people. It might be 2 adults and 2 kids.
We just want to give you the
Yeah.
flexibility.
No, absolutely. Thank you. We appreciate that.
Okay, Vicky, I'm
Yeah,
gonna.
Vic, did you have
I
something?
have a question. I mean, I see the location of the existing TP. Is there any setback requirements for the future ones? I mean, off of a property line?
Not under the current proposal. So we usually do substantial compliance with site plan presented, that would have some distances away from the property line or distance away from the property line and or general location. With this being said, we obviously know where the existing TP is, but we are uncertain about the next 2. And so with it being 3 sites total, 1 known site and the 2 other unknowns, completely up to y'all, but I thought the flexibility would be there. It's also noted that the Holland family owns the majority of property to the south and to the south east, I think it would be. Yeah,
It's like a U. So,
like a
yeah.
U around it. So we could certainly make another, we could either start talking about substantial compliance again and develop a plan, or you could make another condition that no camping activity within 100 feet of the property line or whatever. That's certainly enforceable as well.
Go either way.
I'd rather do it that way rather than have them have to come back with a site plan with proposed. I mean, that just seems a little over the top.
Ms. Huffman, what about the legality of the trash removal? There-
The solid waste collection centers and green boxes are strictly for residential trash. This would be considered commercial trash.
Right.
So that is the reason they have been told that their
Take it with them.
commercial campers would not be able to place their trash in the county dumpsters, and they would not be able to treat it as residential trash by incorporating it into their own
I
household.
wonder if they could get like CNS disposal, has a box that they bring out. I mean, it would take a long time probably to fill it up, but something like that.
They
could
probably
do.
could, and I
They-
think that's what the comment referring to nobody picking up the trash is connected to, that
Mhm.
if they have a commercial pickup service, then the campers could leave their trash in that dumpster and then it be picked up, and they would pay for the disposal fee and the hauling fee.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, just,
It's not terribly expensive, but it's.
And then we just require them to take their own trash at that point. That requirement.
I mean,
With the
And
amount
I
of
think we
people-
can do
And I
that,
think the
but-
requirements from what we're referring to as far as the not being able to collect trash, that I don't think that answer, and correct me if I'm wrong, that came from the health department, correct? Okay, and so that's part of, I'm getting more familiar by the day with the health department regulations on what a primitive campground is versus a traditional RV campground. And so that is one of the stipulations, that they can't provide trash service for the
Oh,
health
okay.
department.
Which is
I
why we
gotcha.
chose primitive, because otherwise we'd have to
Okay.
have septic, and we'd have to have 2
Right.
showers and 2 toilets for 2 people, which seemed excessive. And we'd have to test our water, and we'd have to do all of this other jumping through.
We don't make it.
We're like, I
Right.
can't afford to do that on the, what we provide, so.
And we do have condition, of course, this approval is contingent upon VDOT, emergency management, and then the health department as well. The health department, so the process, as y'all know, is we don't expect them to construct the entrance. We do get them to get a nod from VDOT saying site distance is achievable, and it is achievable in this particular case. But with that being said, prior to the Office of Community Development signing off on the business license, the zoning portion of the business license, we would have to have confirmation the health department has approval, and then VDOT in this case, and emergency management.
Okay. Are there any other questions?
Yeah. Thank you for the clarification, because the health department thing that.
Yeah,
I
that
would
was-
never- I
yeah,
would
that was
never
a little-
guessed that they wouldn't let you collect trash on the site to be primitive.
Well, thank you, and we'll move on to the public hearing, which we need to do. So, thank you, Chris. Thank you, Sarah. All right, we'll now go ahead and open up the public hearing on this matter. Is there anybody signed up?
There's no one physically signed up to speak, but.
Is there anyone wishing to speak?
Not seeing anyone. As far as the Zoom call goes, this is the appropriate time to raise your hand if you would like to make a comment. A few minutes, not seeing any. Not seeing any, turn it back over to the chair.
Okay, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing at this time, bring it back to the commission. I think we came up with number 3, 6, and 12, 6 vehicles, 12 people.
And we're gonna-
And setbacks, what,
100 feet on the property line.
50 or 100. I don't know what it is currently, but
there's plenty of room on this track to be 100 feet. So,
The current, I can tell you in confidence, the current tent site exceeds 100 feet from the property line.
So just maintain that.
sounds
does
fine.
that seem reasonable to?
Like 50, I mean, because my dad, he, hopefully one day, the property that's in question as far as being 150 feet away, hopefully one day, I will get that property divided between me and my sister. So yeah, preferably like 50 feet from the property line, because there's really nothing there. It's not building sites or anything like that.
I'm okay with
I'm
that.
okay with 50 feet. You okay with that?
Yep.
All right.
You ready for the question?
Call for
Okay.
question.
I make a motion to recommend to the Board of Supervisors that the special exception permit for development and operation of a primitive campground in the agricultural and general uses district A2 for LDR section 603.03-15 on 8.79 acre parcel of land located at 280 Rosa Lee Drive, Fairfield, in the South River Magisterial District, identified as tax map 51-23-26A, owned by Jeremiah Holland, be approved with the following conditions. One, campground is limited to primitive tent camping only. No motorhomes, tow behind campers such as pop-up campers, toy haulers, teardrop trailers, stand-up trailers, etc., or other recreational vehicles permitted. Two, campground is limited to a total of 3 primitive camping sites. 3, campground is limited to 6 vehicles, not to exceed 12 people. 4, approval contingent upon final VDOT, Office of Fire Rescue and Emergency Management and Health Department approvals. 5, no camping within 50 feet of the property line.
Do we want to ask trash to be removed?
We're not, yeah,
It's
we're gonna not. because it's
And
until-
report to the
All
health
right.
department. Yeah.
Okay, right. All right, we have a motion, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Chris. Okay, moving on now to Andrew Ludke at 1051 Ross Road, a public hearing for application of special exception permit to operate a bed and breakfast. Mr. Slayton.
Yes, sir. Andrew Lucky is here in attendance with us this evening. This is a special exception for a bed and breakfast homestay in the general residential zoning district. The property is located at 1051 Ross Road. Ross Road is further identified as Route 687. The property is owned by Andrew and Jennifer Lucky. Tax map number 74-B-2-E, and it consists of 2.73 acres in the general residential zoning district. It includes 1 single family dwelling on the property. So it might be a little bit hard to see on the computer here, but of course, this is Ross Road coming out of town, going towards Brushy Hill, if you will. Munger Lane, private road Munger Lane is located where my cursor is. And in fact, I'm going to switch my cursor to a laser pointer. So Munger Lane is located here. So you're traveling further out. Boxerwood is a sort of known landmark, is located right here. So just slightly past Boxerwood off of Donington Lane. Again, it's 1 single family dwelling that is located on the property. As far as the bed and breakfast homestay itself, it's a special exception in the R1 zoning district. The current plan is to rent out an addition in the home, which is separated by an enclosed breezeway. It is still considered a single family dwelling. Includes a kitchen, bathroom, living room, and 2 bedrooms. The property is serviced by a private well and public sewer. No conditions are recommended, consistent with historical bed and breakfast homestay and special exception approvals. With that, the bed and breakfast homestay would prohibit the renting of the entire house, but does provide as an owner occupied home, renting 1 to 3 bedrooms out in that owner occupied home. So discussing that with Mr. Lucky, certainly the current proposal meets that criteria. With that, I'd like to turn the floor over to the co-landowner, Mr. Lucky.
Thank you, Chris. I think Chris summarized the proposal well, and I'm here for questions or concerns.
I mean,
I
this is
don't have
pretty
any.
straightforward, so.
Anybody have any questions? You're off the hook. Okay, at this time, we'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. Is there anybody physically present who wishes to speak?
There's no one physically present to speak, but at this time, we'll recognize anyone that'd like to speak at this time. Let me check my attendees. We do, if you would like to raise your hand now, as far as attendees, now is the appropriate time to make public comments on the Lucky application. Not seeing any, I will turn the floor back over to the chair.
All right. There are no, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing on this matter at this point and bring it back. If there are any questions or discussion, I'll call for the question.
I make a motion to recommend to the Board of Supervisors that the special exception permit to operate a bed and breakfast homestay in the general residential district R1 located at 1051 Ross Road, Lexington, Virginia, in the Buffalo Magisterial District, identified upon the Rockbridge County Land Records as tax map 74B-2-E, be approved without conditions.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Legend. Move on now to, we're going to have a series of steps that we need to take through the next issues.
Yes.
So with Sean Wampler, public hearing, or
Yes.
application for rezoning.
That's correct. There are three, the next three public hearings are associated with the same piece of ground. And I do have a brief PowerPoint presentation. In this case, we do have Mr. Wampler in attendance, and we also have the engineer on the, Mr. Blackwell, the engineer on the project as well. Before I turn the floor over to those gentlemen, I will do a brief PowerPoint presentation. Again, this is a rezoning application, and located on the east side of Steels Fort Road. Steels Fort Road is further identified as 706 at the corner of Steels Fort and North Lee Highway, of course, Route 11 in the Fairfield area. Tax map number associated with the property is 40-2-1A, and in total, the property is 30.83 acres in total per tax records. And how that breaks down is you have approximately 12.4 acres in the A2 zoning district, agricultural general, and approximately 18.4 in the agricultural transitional zone, the AT. The property owner is Melvin Bender. I'm gonna move this to the side here so I can see. So again, I'll switch to my laser pointer. This of course is Route 11. Going towards the Rafine area, and then to the north, going back towards south to Fairfield, obviously. The corner of Steels Fort Road and Route 11 is this location. So the entire property, I'll go ahead and do a quick outline on it. The entire property is located right here. As far as that outline, it does have one out parcel. I believe it's 2 acres with a single family dwelling. This is vacant land, currently vacant land. And you can see the zoning area in this area, the pink. The light pink in this area is zoned AT, and then the white in the area is zoned A2, agricultural general. As far as the rezoning details, it's proposed to rezone 28.54 acres from the AT zoning district and the A2 zoning district to the residential mixed zone, which is R2. The applicant, Mr. Melvin Bender, has submitted a proffer statement to develop the property, the rezone portion of the property in accordance with the plan prepared by Blackwell Engineering. Of course, that's the plan that's in your package. The plan calls for construction of 19 single-family dwellings, 4 duplexes, 2 3-story multifamily condominium buildings, and 2 assisted living facilities. The assisted living facilities require a special exception permit and will be contingent upon the successful rezoning to R2. 18.272 acres is required per table 2 of the land development regulations, and 28.45 acres are available. As far as the plan itself, I think this would be a good time. Make sure that's the last one. That is, as far as the plan itself, in this particular case, I will not stop sharing my screen, but rather allow Mr. Blackwell and Mr. Wampler to utilize this slide for their portion of their presentation.
Mr. Chairman, fellow commissioners, I met Blackwell Engineering and Sean. I guess kind of the manager runs the day-to-day operations for the assisted living facilities, just a couple hundred yards down the street on Route 11. So our plan here, I guess, and I'll let Sean get to it, but we have a piece of property. I'll talk a little bit of engineering. I'll let him talk about the concept for what they want to do. There's public water right across the street. There's public sewer about 600 feet just down the hill toward the low point down on 11. So we got public water, public sewer. There's a major power line running right through the property, not one of the big heavy ones, but it's a power. So we got utility infrastructure right there. We have access to the highway, not the secondary road there, so we're not fronting right on, going in and out on Route 11. So we think that's a little safer for our residents. So the property drains well to the south. We'll have several detention ponds, meeting all the state and DEQ guidelines and the county guidelines, water quality. So the site lends itself well for development from a utility infrastructure point of view. Any questions of that, I'd be more than happy to answer. John, why don't you go over some of the concepts and why
Yes,
y'all are doing that?
Thanks for hearing us tonight. We just, of course, we run Buell Land. Most people know it as Buell Land campus from all the years past. And we had this piece of land that was purchased back, I don't know, it's been a decade ago now, I think. And just wanted to expand on what we've already done on the other side of the road and just bring more of a ability to service more of the community with healthcare by having 2 healthcare centers up there. And also giving some options for those people who sort of more of an age in place model, which is kind of what we have. Kendall sort of has that kind of model too here, Lexington. And so anyway, so the 2 facilities at the top would be pretty much identical to what's there in Raytheon right now at Buell Land. Some single family homes probably scaled down to be able to accommodate sort of the aging population. And of course, the property itself has a little slope on it, so and that way, it does give some nice topography for some views and things like that. But down at the bottom, we have the duplexes, which those would be very similar to what's on Buell Land now as well, with the 10 that are there. And also patio style with all handicap accessible, everything. And then the integration of a country store, sort of a cheese shop if you've been more towards the storage draft area, just to bring a little bit of just light to the property and some options for even having some food that's there. And then also a place for the community to gather. Our philosophy of care is to actually incorporate the generations together and not just isolate the older from the younger. And so, just a place where people can gather and come together. Have a few ideas there with maybe some coffee and things like that. So anyway, but yeah, so that's pretty much an extension. Oh, and then we have the multifamily, which again, just we found that on Buell Land, that oftentimes there does come a time between the villa homes that are there, the duplexes, and then the assisted living, which we've always lended ourselves more towards the intensive care. That's kind of what our, I guess, a niche or specialty is that folks that come to us, we generally, unless there's some reason to have to do this because of, some extreme care things such as a ventilator or something like that. But basically, people with us always get to stay until the end of their life. And so it's kind of our model is to be able to keep people away through. But between the villa homes or the duplexes and also the assisted living, there often is a time where it'd be nice for folks to be able to be inside and not necessarily have to go out to their mailbox or something like that, which we've had issues with that, especially for homeowners here where you get slippery driveways and things like that. So we could provide some, some services there as far as meals and things like that, but that would mostly be independent living, but would be able to be indoors and have like a common space that they can. So anyway, so yeah, so that's pretty much.
And then I'll go, if you look at the numbers, our density, it's about 3.4 units per acre, and that includes bedrooms. So the assisted living facilities are 20 beds in each. So that kind of takes the numbers up, but we're actually in that upper low density to very low mid density for the property. We have a lot of common green space. We're going to try to keep, actually, we're showing that on the plan, big common areas for the residents if they want to get out and walk around and things like that. So we like we have a mix of housing, single, duplex, the condominium, flat type units to the assisted living, where there's more caregiving. So it's looked at as an integrated community. And it's in a kind of an extent, it actually is an extension of the Beulah land across the street. Any particular questions?
You answered my question about how many people in the assisted living. So 20 per.
20 per building.
So is this something that's available to the public, or is this to a certain community that, you know, you guys just serve a certain community, or? And so is it going to be a 55 and over community, basically?
So we don't have it profit that way. We didn't really discuss that. The experience on Yule has been that it really is, I don't know, probably someone to check on us, but probably in the villa homes we have there, we probably almost never had anyone that's been there like under 7 years. Just they kind of sell them. Now, we do sell them, so they're privately owned. So it's versus like the Kendall model, I believe. I don't know if you'll turn on that, but anyway, whereas a continuing care retirement community, generally speaking, in that model, they own everything. And the facility does. And then you rent, you go like companies or something like that. We like to go to keep the money in private hands, and that way they can pass it on. So whereas you don't have this sort of depreciating of your money, it's like $300,000 bond. We've just always sold too. The family directly, and they can pass on to the grandchildren. We have had a couple of times where there was some of the younger people after someone passed or something had moved in, but generally speaking, because the assisted living is the draw there, it just tends to limit itself to almost accepting up for housing.
Do you have a ballpark on pricing, kind of where these, you know, there's just such a need for
Sure.
single family, affordable housing, multifamily, you know?
Yeah, so we've discussed it with a couple of realtors. Depending upon the exact product that we put in there, I mean, it could be a little smaller. I mean, the the villa homes we have on Dual Land right now are anywhere between 1,000 square feet and like 50 to 1,600 square feet. So in the condo going up, because we would also probably we would actually condo that so we could sell those as well.
Mhm.
So those could be a nice, more affordable option, even in the larger homes that might be there. So I would be able to probably throw a half a price out, but you know, somewhere in the 200s to for the maybe the larger single family homes. And then yeah, but the condos would be, we've seen as a real need. And someone with a very modest income probably can afford to be in those.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Just one, how about the store, that would be open to the general public or just for residents? Okay. And the entrance would be off of Steele's Fort Road also?
Yes, we, because it's right at a corner, and the VDOT new access management guidelines that all developments have to do. Getting access on 11 is just can't happen, and it's so close to Route 11. We actually have to access this store from our new driveway coming in. Kind of a shared, you know, we have, I say drive, we have this road going looping through, that'll be private driveway for all the residents and the store. And so the store will be open to the public, but it's the reason we're putting it there is for the access to, direct access to the neighborhood that we're creating for the residents. They can walk down to, or hop in the golf cart and go down there to it or something like that, however they want to get down there. But so they don't have to go out on the major road. They
Right.
get normal staples, and then you still have to go to the grocery store, things like that. But we're hoping to provide a local service for the residents.
Okay, we may be asking you more questions as we go through the series of things that we need to go through, so don't go away.
I have a few other follow-up comments. Don't object. So speaking of the road is proposed to be private, but per section 904.02-2, the road is required to be VDOT or required to be designed and built to VDOT rolling terrain standards. And again, he mentioned that both of them mentioned as public water and public sewer in the area. This development will be served by public water and public sewer. But just to be clear on the next application, really, As far as planning and zoning goes, we would consider the next application, and there's some discussion on assisted living and what is assisted living and what's not. And so I'd like to clarify that during this public hearing. As far as planning and zoning goes, we would consider the assisted living as just that, as the assisted living. Because of the private ownership and the structure as described, we would not consider the single family subdivision, nor the multifamily, nor the duplex as a part of the assisted living, because they are going to be privately owned, not by the corporation, and sold to private individuals. Now, if they have age restrictions, any restrictive covenants above and beyond that, that's obviously up to their marketing type thing. So I just wanted to clarify that the road will be private, but built to state standards, required to be built to state standards, and then to explain what is exactly considered a part of the assisted living facility and what is not. Any questions on that?
And I read in there, the HOA then would be responsible for taking care of the road maintenance and all that. So you're talking about road maintenance agreements and things like that, because you'd have an HOA in place.
So I'm going to stop sharing my screen at this point and turn the floor back.
Okay, we'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. And the public hearing right now is strictly for the rezoning portion of all of this project. So we'll make that clear that that's what we are looking at. And the rezoning would be from the two sections, A2 and the AT, into an R2 residential.
That's exactly correct. So again, the total parcel size is 30.8. Excuse me. The total parcel size is 30.83 acres, and the rezoning under consideration under this public hearing is a total of 28.45. It includes everything except for the corner lot.
Yeah, except for the corner lot for the
Absolutely. The appropriate time. We're going to, did you open the public hearing? Is
the
that-
public hearing is now
Yes.
is open. Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, please come forward, and we'll ask that comments be kept reasonably. If we have to get a timer in, we'll go with 3 minutes.
Well,
You state your name, address, your
I'm
district.
Calvert S. Fitzgerald II. My family owns a farm next door. I've used that piece of property for the last 12, 15, 20 years. I don't know how long, even before they bought it. And I have my work schedule. I haven't been able to get by and visit with them, and I'm all in approval for this. The only thing that I have a little concern with is a 35-acre crop field that joins the top of the streams down where the two assisted livings will be. I would like to see some kind of buffer on y'all side. So, and sometimes at nighttime at 12, we're chopping corn, putting up hay or something, just to be neighborly. If we get something there, and I want to get that out now, so when y'all are looking at this, as y'all move forward, and I'm not here, y'all can keep that in the back of your mind to put some kind of screening. Because I don't want to be this neighborly, but sometimes in farming, you have to do things at odd hours of the night. So, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzgerald. Okay, are there any other persons present who would like to speak?
No one has signed up at this time. With that being said, I will check the attendees. If you would like to make a comment on the vendor rezoning, now's the time to raise the hand. Not seeing any, we will turn it back over to the chair.
We do have a letter that was sent in by a concerned
We do.
citizen that.
Yeah, we need to read that letter.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is from Peggy G. Vaughn, who is an adjoiner. She is actually the development makes a horseshoe, and she is the inside of the horseshoe, that parcel there, 40 Steels Fort, Rafine, Virginia. And it says the correspondence to you is regarding the information I received from you recently for a special exception application made by Sean Wampler / Melvin Bender. They're asking for a special exception permit to construct and operate retail, construct and operate a continuing care facility, and to construct single-family housing and multifamily dwellings off of Route 706 and North Lee Highway. Since the acreage involved in all of this construction surrounds my property, 40 Steels Fort Road, I am very concerned about the impact it would have on me and other neighboring residents. First, it would increase the volume of traffic on 706, which is heavily used as a cut through to Rafine Road and all of the development and high traffic at that intersection. I do wonder why Mr. Wampler / Bender would not want to construct their country store at that location, which is already commercially oriented. I do not see the need or value in construction of a retail business in the middle of otherwise residential and farming location. I currently mow the right of way and keep the trash cleaned up on 706 from Route 11 to Moore's Trail Road. I can only imagine the extra time involved with the increased traffic and a retail operation. I do realize that the property involved here is Mr. Bender's, and he does have the financial investment in it, but I am hopeful that he will consider the community at large. I'm a 79-year-old single woman living on a tight fixed income. I am sure that this development around me, the value of my home will decrease while the property tax will increase. Will he be prepared to help his neighbors offset that? I don't think so. In closing, I would remind the Planning and Zoning Board and the Board of Supervisors that Lee Highway, Route 11 is a scenic highway. However, if land development and construction continue, it will appear as all other places that are consumed with development for individual gain. I ask you to review my concerns and convey to all other parties involved in this zoning hearing, i.e. Board of Supervisors and Planning Board. Thank you, Peggy G. Vaughn. And just an additional note, this does lie within the tourism corridor overlay. And I don't know the extent of what would need to be approved through the TCO. I know the country store, obviously, I believe the multifamily would have to be approved.
It would include the multifamily. As far as the TCO approval, it pertains to commercial development, which certainly would be the assisted living facility, depending on the view from Route 11, the country store, as Mr. Busso stated, and the multifamily development would all three of those would have to be reviewed by the Tourism Corridor Overlay Board.
Ms. Vaughn, if you are listening, thank you for your comments. Are there any other comments for the public hearing? I don't think we had anything else on the electronically.
No hands raised.
No hands raised.
All right, this time we'll go ahead and close the public hearing on the rezoning matter. Bring it back to the commission. Anybody have any concerns or questions? Thank you. Call for the question.
I make a motion to recommend to the Board of Supervisors that the conditional rezoning of the 28.45 acre tract of land located on the east side of Steels Fort Road, Route 706, at the northeastern corner of its intersection with North Lee Highway, Route 11, in the South River Magisterial District, and identified as tax map 40-2-1A from the Agricultural and General Uses A2 zoning district and the Agricultural Transitional AT zoning district to the Residential Mixed R2 zoning district with acceptance of proffered conditions be approved. A second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Prior to a
Say
roll call
something.
vote, if I may, I apologize, interrupted, maybe out of line, but as far as Mr. Fitzgerald's comment of a buffer, now would be the appropriate, with the rezoning plan would be the appropriate time to address that concern.
That at the rezoning time and not at the,
Not at the,
I would say the rezoning time, as far as the overall rezoning plan, including a buffer, Ms.
That
Huffman.
would be
Yeah,
part
I
of special exemption
I
for
was
their
gonna say,
permit themselves, right?
I think either one would work.
to
but
me,
that
that
would-
seems to go with the development part of it.
So
Yeah,
that would
the
only
rezoning.
pertain to the assisted living, not the multifamily, and it is a common property line that pertains to the multifamily as well.
okay,
So the special exception next month or the very next public hearing only pertains to the assisted living. And as stated in the presentation, the assisted living is the,
okay, and then, okay, I understand. So that if for the single family and the multifamily dwellings,
But we have to approve.
okay, but
That-
Mr. Busso, I'm glad we're having this conversation. Mr. Busso pointed out that the way the current configuration is, lot 19 actually wraps around lot 20, which is condo number 1, and lot 21, which is condo 2. So I apologize, stay corrected. I think we could handle it during
We
the
need to do it
special
once we see
exception.
a site plan and things like that. Do you have something?
We proffered this plan
That's correct, yes.
in both assisted living, the whole frontage we have.
Mr. Phil.
So both assisted living facilities, their lots front this property. We could make a condition.
I think that's what I would
I
prefer to
apologize,
do.
yes.
We're okay putting them in. Still out with them.
Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sorry, I had to talk that out before we
Yeah, that's
pulled the
fine.
trigger.
That's
Apologize.
fine, yeah.
That's good.
Apologize for
So
interrupting.
everybody remember the
So
motion?
we've had the motion, it's been seconded, so we either approve it or disapprove it, and
Yes.
So,
all in favor?
I,
Motion carries. Okay, going into the next part of this puzzle. Would be, we'll open up a public hearing for the special exception permit to build and operate an assisted living facility on this tract, as we've already been instructed with that. This, just remind the people that this does not concern the single-family dwellings, the multifamily dwellings, and the duplexes. It's only the assisted living that are up there would be the northern end of the property. Okay, so
We had prepared a presentation for the assisted living special exception if you'd like to
Yeah.
continue with that.
let's go ahead and have that.
I'll make it pretty brief. More or less the same things. Bear with me here. All right, this is a special exception for a assisted living facility. Just briefly, same piece of property located on east side of Seals Fort. I'll spare you all the details of the tax map number, the acreage, and the owner, of course, is the vendor. As far as the special exception detail, the application is to construct and operate a continued care retirement community, assisted living facility rather, in the R2 zoning district. The project is extension of the existing Buell Land campus in Fairfield or Rafine. Two buildings consisting of 20 units each, 20 beds on two separate parcels, one 1.9.7 acre lot and one 6.65 acre lot. The buildings will be accessed via private maintained road off of Steele's Fort, again, required to be built to state standards because of the number of parcels it serves. Each facility will be served by approximately 15 employees connected to public water and public sewer. Each building, each assisted living facility has 11 parking spaces, and this meets the requirements set in 706 and 713. With that being said, this is the same plan as the previous rezoning plan, but obviously the focus again will be on this parcel and then this parcel here. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Wampler and Mr. Blackwell to review the details of the assisted living portion.
Yeah. Okay. So once again, yeah, these assisted livings, they're about 6,000 square feet. The current one that we have on the hill there is 10 bedrooms with a living room in the central area. Again, most of the elderly residents have a recliner in the living room there, and they get to have a place to spend their time in the center and not just have a room or have a lobby where it'd be like lobby furniture. So home-like care. And yeah, it's built to an I2 standard building, all the codes that go along with that. And we also would have somewhere within these housings here, we always have a couple that lives on the property there. The vendor families live there on the property for years. And just to have that extra oversight of the facility and the staff and everybody. And being that we do intensive care, just a pretty critical thing to have. And yeah, and so we just hope to basically do the exact same sort of model as what we've had over on Buell Land. And yeah, so.
We talked about the screening, so Sean, Mr. Wampus, if we're able to, maybe we can word it that the screening will be in place, and worked out with the county and Mr. Fitzgerald's approval. I mean, what level, it's hard to right on the spot come up with something, but y'all need to add a condition, which I understand. We're agreeable with working with Mr. Fitzgerald and the county, come to an acceptable screening that's acceptable to both the county and Mr. Fitzgerald.
so how detailed do we need to be in that, Chris?
There's normal screening we do on projects, but Mr. Fisher, I hope you don't come back and say we want 16 rows of trees at 5 foot on center, but reasonable. Yeah, and I think that's reasonable.
Right. Well, I think the issue is reasonable to you is not
No,
necessarily.
I think
reasonable
what's
to-
reasonable
Yeah.
to what the county, Chris has done this many times, we've done it many times. I can come up with a concept, submit to the county, get with Mr. Fitzgerald, so we're all happy on that.
Mhm.
It's not just my input on.
Don't we usually have to
We'd have to
have
have we
a
have a site view over.
amended
We
site
will have a
plan?
site plan process we have to do.
This would be the appropriate time to flush out the actual, and we, generally speaking, we do a double row of arborvitaes, Leland cypresses, those type of things. And of course, that will provide approximately a 50-foot buffer with a double staggered row with that. And of course, that's for light and noise as discussed. And so with that being said, I think it is appropriate to have it as a condition. One, we have not talked about conditions thus far, but one condition that I could foresee is substantial compliance with the site plan for the assisted living portion prepared by Blackwell Engineer, titled Rezoning Plan, Blue Ridge Christian Home North Campus, dated 10/14/21. And then number 2 would be, I think the best time, and usually we have a little bit more time to deal with this, but these are slated to go to the Board of Supervisors on Monday. And so I could certainly work with Mr. Blackwell to have, we would like, staff would recommend having a somewhat detailed plan on the plan before the board takes action on it. Usually that's pretty easy, but I don't know your
I can
time
add it
frame.
in tomorrow and get
Okay.
it to you by Friday morning at the latest.
Absolutely.
Actually showing it on the plan, so.
So for now, though, we could just say the second one would be a 50-foot buffer
50-foot
with
buffer.
double staggered rows of Leland cypress and arborvitae
Or compare,
or comparable,
Comparable,
I would tend to
Or
stay away
what?
from artificial
compatible.
arborvitae. They can grow so slowly. Yeah. they
Okay.
do.
We're okay.
Now, is that number 1, isn't that what he just said? Substantial compliance with the site plan entitled rezoning preliminary layout drawing? That's the same thing
did-
that
yeah,
he's
it's
got
just what
there.
he-
It's not
yeah.
a different one, which he's.
he said number 2, yeah.
So number 2, we
It's
would.
drawing number 1 and number 2 and plat entitled, blah, blah, blah. I just want to make sure.
Right,
that's
so
all right.
I
number,
just incorporated all of them because I had not had a chance to talk with him in detail about what it should be. So if he is suggesting we leave out any of those, that's a
I'm sorry, I was distracted, did not follow y'all's conversation.
We're
You
talking
read
about
one
the,
thing and we're reading
proposed-
it some other
yeah,
way.
so she gave us the proposed, and it just says substantial compliance with site plan entitled rezoning preliminary layout, drawing number 1 and drawing number 2 and plat entitled rezoning preliminary plat, all dated October 14th. I just want to make sure
We would
that's the
need to-
same. Is that the same one that you're referring to that
then
you?
we would.
That
need-
is, yes.
Okay, so
we
I'm fine
would-
with that.
But dated October.
This is
dated
right,
that
October 14th. That's what he
Right, but it
said.
doesn't have the buffering in there.
Right,
okay.
But you're gonna add that
dated
as number
that, and then
2.
that's going to be number 2.
Number 2, right,
Tomorrow.
revision.
And I'll put trees.
Right, okay. We'll work with the semantics on that.
Okay.
But,
So is it possible to get that tomorrow by 5? I know that's extremely tight time frame, but that's.
We're just putting 2 trees on, just copy.
Sure, and so where we're talking about, I can pull up the aerial photo if needed, but where we're talking about
Right.
is
On common property with Mr. Pfister.
yes, and while we don't have this particular landowner here, we could certainly look at, I could pull up the aerial photo to see if y'all think there's a need for, and I'm uncertain on even the ownership, but I can certainly pull up the GIS.
Sorrels and Gerhardt.
The
Gerhardt's, I think
Gerhardt
that,
property. Is okay.
Yeah.
We
And
could
what
just
about the
say with
lady-
adjacent
Yeah, what about
property
the-
owners.
What about the lady in the center? I mean,
The
I know that
barn?
they were talking about,
Would that be part of another permit that we, like, has to do more with the country store or?
that only
I
on
think
one
that would
side.
have, yes, that would have to be associated with the country store.
Because it's by right now that's residential on the single family homes, right? So we're not requiring any screening from them to that lady who wrote the letter.
Right. Ms. Vaughn.
Currently, that is correct. Now, that's something that we could, that staff could discuss with the supervisors, of course, but that's currently, yes, that is correct.
Maybe more toward the country store. If we, there could be.
Sure, there.
I think if you just say with adjacent property
Adjacent,
owners,
yeah.
that a 50-foot buffer with double staggered rows, leaving cypress and whatever, and then say.
Well, the
with
difficulty
adjacent
there is that they're
property.
subdividing each piece. So if you say that, they'd have. to
Yeah,
put
we
a
couldn't do
buffer
that.
on
We couldn't do that
duplexes
side
on
of it.
Single family on the inside as well, because those will
Ah,
all be
gotcha.
individual property owners.
Right. So we couldn't do this side, but we could definitely do this side to protect her from the country store.
Yeah.
So let me
We don't
let me
do that.
share my screen and I can share you what Mr. Blackwell has drawn from current slide. I'll turn this to a pointer. And so what we've described now is, of course, Mr. Fitzgerald's property and attendance is a double row of Leland cypresses or comparable in this location here, and then also along the Gerhardt property here.
So do we need to reference those tax map numbers when we talk about where those?
No, I
buffers
think
need
we're,
to be?
Mr. Blackwell and I are on the same page. We're on the same
Okay.
page.
I'll show it along those.
So maybe after the substantial compliance, maybe it should be to be revised 12/9/21.
Yes, with a revision date showing, with the revision date showing the revised buffer, yes.
So going back to the single family, the hole in the donut, that lady's, would this be the appropriate place to put a buffer in or going to the country store?
I'd be going
Which is
I think
only
it's gotta
really
go with
one-
the country
one side.
store.
Could you put on three sides if,
Because it's residential. We can't, I mean, she's residential in that single family.
We
home.
have a lot of open common area there, and we're proper in this plan, so our assisted livings are up the hill. I think there's a lot of buffer between us and them. And us and this town, and so we have that open fields, and so I think there's a buffer there.
Visual buffer for her, the
I
back
can
part of her
understand the
property.
buffer from our residents to the farming operations. 100 feet.
Right.
Our assisted living in this farm's home, we got hundreds and hundreds, and it's probably close to 1,000 feet. That's 700, almost 800 feet to her house up to our.
There is
Yeah.
almost about 100 feet worth of elevation change there too.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's big hill.
Did you-
Put
did you
trees
see a
and the
visual
pipes
of it?
look right over them to see.
Ms. Vaughn, we'll do, I mean, it's definitely along the country store there. I just want.
But that would go in the next, that would go in the
part,
next.
Yeah, but on that side there, we just want to do something that's a negative to them. We might have to have those row of trees next to prefer to have that view up the mountain.
Right,
so to speak.
right.
So,
I agree.
But if they really wanted that, we.
I'll let you have that.
Mhm.
Okay, so
Not know the area, but-
with, thank you all, have the public hearing for open the public hearing. Did we already open that public hearing?
I don't think we can.
No, it's time to open the public, no, open the public hearing for this section. Is there anybody physically present who wishes to speak?
There's no one signed up at this time. You recognize it.
Is there anybody electronically?
Assisted living facility. As far as electronically, there's no one. Now is the appropriate time to raise your hand. There's no hands raised. With that, I'll turn it back to the chair.
Okay, at this time, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing, bring it back to the planning commission. Questions, discussion? We'll call for the question.
Ready for the question?
Let's go.
I make a motion to recommend to the Board of Supervisors that the special exception permit to construct and operate a continuing care retirement facility in the residential mixed R2 zoning district per LDR section 604B.03-2 on a 28.45 acre tract of land owned by Melvin C. Bender and located on the east side of Steele Sport Road, Route 706, at the northeastern corner of its intersection with Northley Highway, Route 11, in the South River Magisterial District, and identified as tax map 40-2-1A be approved with the following conditions. One, substantial compliance with the site plan entitled rezoning preliminary layout drawing number 1 and drawing number 2 and plat entitled rezoning preliminary plat, all dated October 14th, 2021, with a revision date of 12/9/2021, showing the 50-foot buffer, which will be on file in the Office of Community Development. 2, a 50-foot buffer along the shared property line with the Fitzgerald property with double staggered rows of Leland cypress or comparable.
And if I may interject, I think the first, your modified first motion with the revision date of tomorrow, will take care of the CS, with the Fitzgerald property, excuse me, and the Gerhardt property.
Can we add Gerhardt?
All right, sure. So we
Okay.
can say Fitzgerald and Gerhardt property.
Sure. Is that
Very good.
everybody's approval? Okay. We have a
Second.
motion. We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion carries. And we'll go to part 3 of this project. Application for a special exception permit to build and operate a country general store in the agricultural and A2 zone and ag AT zone district here. Okay, again, we've got a good overview, but if there's additional information we need to have, then
Yeah,
This would be
I'd
the
like to
appropriate
just, for record, go over a brief PowerPoint presentation. I will make it as brief as possible. This is the portion of the property that was not under consideration excuse me. This is the portion of the property that was not under consideration for the previous rezoning. This is actually physically located on the corner of located on the east side of Steelsfort Road, and North Lee Highway, portion of tax map number 40-2-1A, total 30.83 acres. We went over the previous rezoning. This proposed sites consist of approximately 2.38 acres after the subdivision, owned by Melvin Bender. As far as the special exception details itself, applications construct and operate a general store in the AT and A2 zoning district. Building size is proposed at approximately 10,000 square feet, with approximately two-thirds of the building being dedicated to retail space. The store is proposed to help service residents of the proposed development and the surrounding area. Per section 703 of the land development regulations, 34 parking spaces are required, 35 are being provided. This proposed development will be served by public water and public sewer. And before I turn the floor over, this is, of course, the portion of the property that we're dealing with. The private road that will be built to state standards is located here for a short jog, if you will. And then you take a right into the parking lot of the country store. And so the parking lot is located here and the country store is located here. As far as, what the definition of a country store is, I thought it'd be beneficial to review that. It's a single store which offers offers for sale primarily most of the following articles: bread, milk, cheese, fresh meats, vegetables, canned and bottled foods, drinks, tobacco products, candy, papers and magazines, and general hardware articles. Gasoline may be offered for sale, but only as a secondary activity to the general store itself. With that being said, again, I'd like to turn this portion of the presentation over to Mr. Blackwell and Mr. Wampler for additional details on the project.
Really here for any questions. We talked about some screening. There is room for us to put screening on our side. It's kind of on that western side of our drive coming in off of Steele Road, but before we get to Mrs. Vaughn's property. But we put up a double row of Leland cypress there, or a good thick row of Leland cypresses. We may block her view, which may or may not be acceptable to her. So I hate to proffer, or condition something
that
She may not want, once she really realizes how it's going to affect her property, because it will block her view of the mountains. We're not opposed to some type of screening. I don't know how to get around if that's something y'all decide you need. We are looking at this as a general store, not a gas station facility. And we did some traffic stuff for VDOT with that assumption. So we're not planning to do, it's more a store type of place, not a gas station.
And your entrance lends itself more towards your
Right.
your
We have
residents.
gas facility. It just changes the amount of traffic coming in and out. Any particular questions?
No.
I'm not sure how we'll word this buffer idea, but thank you. So at this time, we'll go ahead and open up the public hearing for the general store. Is there anybody physically present who wishes to speak?
No one is signed up at the time. We'll recognize everyone.
Is there anybody electronically?
Let me stop sharing my screen, apologize. If you would like to raise your hand to discuss, make public comments on the general store, special exception for general store in the AT and A2 zoning district, now is the appropriate time. Not seeing any, I will turn it back over to the chair.
Okay. This time we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And bring it back to the commission. Anybody have any questions?
I mean, I'm looking at the site plan here, and I mean, there's a road between her house and where this proposed Vaughn's house and where the store would be. I mean, it's pretty far away from there. I don't know that we want to get into that screening and all that. What are you thinking?
I would disagree. I mean, I think we ought to have it in there, and if she decides she doesn't want it, then that's something that you can work out between landowners. I mean, it's pretty intensive use, pretty close versus, an agricultural field on top of the hill. I'm not saying she may or may not want it, but I think we ought to have it in there.
How do you word that legally? That contingent upon the wishes of the adjacent landowner?
Because the problem with that is if the landowner changes, wouldn't it? Yeah, that would be the problem. Like she doesn't care, but the next landowner does.
Yeah, that's the sticky wicket too.
I mean, I wish they'd had, the conversation before,
Mhm.
because we have no idea.
Yeah.
She doesn't want it at all, but if it's going to be there, what's going to make it more palatable?
This has to go to the TCO. I wonder,
With the TCO once it goes to the TCO, would that be something they would add? Something could have the
They could add.
conversation with Ms. Vaughn?
Let me,
Or that the Board of Supervisors could add.
Couldn't it be like something
That buys you some time.
complimentary, may not be extremely tall, it blocks her view, but it could be something that's going to be.
so the one area that generally speaking, the one area that generally speaking, the planning commission and others are concerned about is the headlights, of course. And so I see, obviously you're turning a right into the parking lot, and then you're turning into the parking lot. You're not going to get many headlights at that point, but coming out of it would in the past, that's been a concern of the
But
planning.
the store hours though, you have an idea because it's daylight.
Depending on the season of the year, that could be a consideration.
The other thing is-
Summertime versus wintertime, daylight hours type thing.
The thing is, it would have to be on the opposite side of the road. I mean, it would be on her side.
mhm.
That's something we can let the TCO or Board of Supervisors add in once somebody's had a conversation with her about what's palatable to her.
The issue with that is that it is unusual time frame. I don't think I've mentioned that. Of course, y'all got email correspondence, and all the applicants know But with the Board of Supervisors not holding a second meeting, we had a lot of discussion on when this would go through. And so this is scheduled for a public hearing for Monday, the 13th, I believe it is, with the Board of Supervisors. So with that, it's very little.
Well, so my question is, when you have that public hearing, can they then add another condition? And
Absolutely,
add it in
yes.
at that point?
The Board of Supervisors has the ability to take your recommendation, prove it as
amend it
submitted,
or whatever.
modify the conditions, or remove all conditions.
Just wondered if that would buy us enough time for somebody to have a conversation with Ms. Vaughn and see what she's thinking.
Or we just put it in there and they can remove it. The
If she says
Board
she
of
doesn't want
Supervisors
it.
can remove it. Yeah. I think it's safer to go ahead and put it in.
Put it
now.
in now and then have them remove it if that's the case.
So, Mr. Blackwell, any idea on your distance? I obviously see your edge of pavement is in magenta, and the property line, I believe, is in the red, dark red, and red dash dot.
Single row.
That's much Leland Cypress. Flowering tree.
Right. Then she may want something lower growing than a.
Well, I was gonna say, I don't think Leland Cypress, if you've seen her property,
It's more like ornament.
She's-
She's very particular at
I
the
mean,
property.
Leland Cypress is not gonna fly with her,
Yeah.
I don't think. And I would think you'd want it lower
Lower.
anyway.
Yeah,
Lowering and
that's
lower.
what I'm thinking as well. And I'm not a landscape architect by any means, but I can't, it was not emerald green arbor, it might be emerald green arborvitae
They're slower
that
growing.
are smaller and have
Smaller.
a max height of 15 feet-ish versus Leland cypresses that are 60 to 70 feet tall and 25 feet wide. Yeah, at maturity.
Cypress, right up all in Rockbridge County.
Well, I think we add the
Just put it in there.
single row vegetated buffer. And then at the Board of Supervisors, we can be more specific.
Single row, a vegetated buffer.
Right, that would be the, between the general store and her property. Does that work?
A single row of vegetative buffer on the southeast side of the Bond property? Or is that the southeast side of the?
The southeast side of her property.
That is correct. The southeast side.
Of the
There-
Bond, of the Bond property?
Yes,
the-
it would be the northwest side of the Bender property.
We want our the vendor property, right? Not the bond property.
But it would, the requirement would be for the plantings to be on the Bender property, yes. So however, I think it'd be safer to say that the northwest side, north side of the proposed road on the Bender property. Yes. Yes, and we can certainly, Ms. Vaughn did include a phone number on her letterhead, so we did get this via certified mail today, this afternoon at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. I did not have an opportunity to follow up with her directly, but she will certainly be on my very first thing in the morning. And I could relay that information to her, and we can work to get Mr. Blackwell and myself to work together on what the appropriate planting heights or what the appropriate plantings are. With that being said, what I'm hearing from the Planning Commission is that y'all are agreeing, I should say, that it's not a row of Leland cypresses, but rather a maybe 15 to 20 foot at maturity height evergreen shrub tree, if you will.
That would block the intent is to block the traffic of the
Yes.
car lights coming out.
And we can work with the design and construction guidelines for the TCO to develop those plants.
There you go.
I mean, it could be even a American holly or something. American hollies provide a significant
Let you come up with
buffer
that
as well.
detail. All right.
All right, call for the question.
All right. We already did the open. Did we do the public
With-
hearing and all that?
We've done the
Okay,
public hearing.
all good. All right, so I make a motion to recommend to the Board of Supervisors that the special exception permit to build and operate a country general store in agricultural and general uses A2 in the agricultural transitional AT zoning district for LDR section 603.03-6 and section 603B.03-1 on a 2.3 acre portion to be subdivided of a 28.45 acre tract of land owned by Melvin C. Bender and located on the northeast corner of Steels Fort Road, Route 706, and North Lee Highway, Route 11, in the South River Magisterial District, and identified as a portion of tax map 40-2-1A be approved with the following conditions: substantial compliance with site plan entitled rezoning preliminary layout, drawing number 1 and drawing number 2, and plat entitled rezoning preliminary plat, all dated October 14th, 2021, and revised 12/9/2021. To show a single row of vegetated buffer on the northwest, on the north side of the proposed road on the Bender property. That all good?
I second.
Okay.
We got the motion, got the second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion carries. Thank you all for willing to work with us. Okay. The next on the agenda is public hearing, zoning text amendment to define and provide for wood yards as a use in the agricultural zoning districts.
Yes, and luckily for everyone, I do not have a PowerPoint presentation for wood yards, but I do have a PDF I'd like to share, just to briefly go over what we have going on. Bear with me here. Let me make sure this is latest, greatest. Yes. I apologize. Let's see. All right, we've been working on this, as y'all know, for the last few months. And this would be for defining wood yards and providing for wood yards by special exception in the agricultural and limited use district. That's the A1 zoning district, and also doing the same for the A2 zoning district, the agricultural general use district. And so with that being said, we would define it, provide for it, and then have some regulations pertaining to it as in an agricultural zoning district. So if you would allow, I would just go briefly go through the proposal and then open up the public hearing. So the first we have a draft definition of a wood yard under section 203.229A. And that is a wood yard would be any parcel of land or portion thereof where the primary use of the land is for commercial sorting and marketing of logs. And so that's obviously the definition. We then provide for it as stated under 602.03 draft ordinance 602.03-14 wood yards subject to the provisions set forth in 716 of these regulations. And of course, I'll get to 716 here shortly. And so we do the same in 603, that's the A2 zoning district. Scrolling down to 603.03-25, and it states wood yard subject to provisions set forth in 716 of these regulations. And so currently we have wood yards and we have minimum of three wood yards in the industrial zoning district as a permitted use. So they're currently obviously a permitted use in the industrial zoning district. So the current proposal, as discussed in the past, is to remove them out of section 607.02-10, again, an industrial zoning district, and provide them in 607.02-24. And so the only change between this one is obviously it's still a permitted use in the industrial zoning district, but it would be subject to the provision set forth in 716.01. With that being said, what we talked about last month was the Planning Commission directed staff to make modifications to 716 and then advertise for a public hearing accordingly. So that's exactly what we've done, of course. With that being said, we have a new section. This is all new language, draft language, if you will, for wood yards. So again, in the agricultural zoning district, all of three of these provisions would apply for wood yards in the agricultural zoning district, and in an industrial zoning district, only number one would pertain to industrial zoning district, as previously mentioned. With that being said, I'll just briefly read them. 716.01, in addition to the regulations stipulated in section 608-13, which is our floodplain, existing floodplain regulations, the placement or storage log in a flood hazard district is only allowed if properly secured and on site in accordance with a sealed plan prepared by a licensed professional engineer with the Commonwealth. And so to back up a little bit, that what is in blue and what is in blue on this particular screen and what y'all have in front of you is slightly worded differently than what was included in the package. In my opinion, the intent is the same and the outcome is the same, but it's just slightly worded. And so number two, 716.02, no use of machinery with the exception of 1 to 2 idling trucks waiting to be unloaded, grading or sorting of logs, loading or unloading of trucks, or other activities creating excessive light or noise shall be conducted between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. And number three, again, that's 716.03, states vegetated buffer along all property lines and public roads shall be required at a minimum of 50 feet in width and shall otherwise comply with section 1302.05 of the County of Rockbridge Land Development, which is our existing buffer requirements, except may be modified by the Planning Commission as provided therein. So again, this was the direction of the Planning Commission to staff to take these proposed text amendments to public hearing, and we have advertised accordingly.
So at this time, we'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. If there's anybody present wish to speak.
There's no one physically signed up, but we will take a moment to recognize anyone that would like to speak. Mr.
Orson?
I'll let you state your name, Matt.
Russ Orson, Walker's Creek. Really just a question. You said sorting logs, but it said storing logs.
I
Yeah.
apologize.
You know which one?
You misspoke.
I misspoke.
Storing.
So it is
It
storing.
says storing.
Storing, not sorting. That's fine. And then the engineer with the Commonwealth of Virginia, would that be construed as an engineer that works for the Commonwealth?
Let me see.
Licensed professional engineer, licensed with the Commonwealth.
Within the Commonwealth.
Prepared by a licensed professional engineer, but it says with the
Yeah.
Commonwealth of Virginia.
Licensed president with
Licensed
the
by-
Commonwealth of Virginia seems like it's an employee.
Yeah.
of
You're
the
an
state.
employee of
I
the
think
state.
that's right.
I'm
That,
with
that,
Perkins and Orson.
I was gonna say, I mean, that bothered me, and then the second thing too, it seems like we need to change some.
The-
The third time will be a charm on this.
It's just a word or two. It's just
Yeah.
a word or two. and-
Yeah,
And I know the intent.
By licensed, I think the intent was the licensed within the Commonwealth of Virginia. Not licensed.
Move the word license to. after
Right,
professional
so
engineer.
sealed plant prepared by a professional engineer
You're
licensed
licensed
with the
with-
Commonwealth of Virginia.
Within the Commonwealth
The
of
other thing
Virginia.
is, well,
That work?
Vicky's reading.
Rereading that. Does that work to move the word license to after
It's
engineer?
changed since I worked on it, so it's
So-
fine like you suggest.
Okay.
Okay. And the other thing was, in 716.02, it sounds like it's like no use of machinery with the exception of an idling truck waiting to.
Sounds like
It's like
all
a run
those
assist,
things
like
are
all
there.
those things are an exception if you read it, you know.
I agree with that.
So it sounds like a run-on sentence. Can we make
Kinda
that a
needs to be in
period and then?
Parenthesis, well, or in parenthesis, with the exception of 1 to 2 idling trucks. So it's no use of machinery.
Or put
comma,
it at the
grading or
end.
sorting
Yeah,
of
just
logs.
move that.
Like with the, no use of machinery, unloading, grading, whatever activities that exceed the
That way
light.
you've got. no
And
use
just
of
move it
Except
with the
for-
exception of 2
yeah.
idling trucks waiting to be unloaded, move that to the
I
end.
think you could just put it in
After 6 a.m.
parentheses.
The way it reads now. Chris and I tried, what the comment is, the way it reads now, it seems like no use of machinery with the exception of idling trucks, grading, sorting of logs.
Yeah, like you could
loading
do
or
all of
unloading
that
logs.
between 10 and
Yeah,
6.
No, I agree. That could be.
So if you have no use of machinery,
And then I
Grading
think
or
in
grading,
parentheses.
grading or
you said-
sorting logs, loading or unloading trucks or other activities creating excessive light or noise shall be conducted between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. with the exception
Of
of 1 or
idling
2 idling
trucks and
trucks
2
waiting to be
Yeah,
unloaded.
see.
Just move that
Yes.
to the end.
Good, both good catches.
Just sounds like, yeah.
And of course, what we don't have, and I certainly can pull it up, which of course we've emailed y'all to the planning commission members and Mr. Orson and the pending application, this particular language plus all the reference 608-13 and of course the 13.02-05, which is the buffer. So y'all are familiar with those.
Yeah.
regulations.
Yes. Speaking for myself, are you familiar with those?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry.
All right, we're still in the public hearing. Is there anyone else physically present? If not, do we have somebody electronically?
I will stop sharing briefly, if we can pull that back up if needed. We have one attendee. If you would like to raise your hand, now's the appropriate time. Not seeing any, I will turn it back over to the chair.
Okay, if there's no further public comment, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Bring it back. We beat this,
We beat it to death. It's- it's
and
time to go.
I think
We made
this
some-
looks like
Um,
what's going on here.
So I guess my question is, are we making the motion with the following changes, or we're just making the motion? Because those are really just verbiage as far as punctuation in one of them. And,
I think you can make it with, as amended in the meeting,
okay,
and we've got it written down.
okay. All right.
Call for the question.
I make a motion to recommend to the Board of Supervisors that the proposed text amendments to LDR Section 302 to add a definition for wood yards, to add Section 602.03-14 to allow wood yard as a use by special exception in the agricultural and limited uses A1 district, to add Section 603.03-25 to allow a wood yard as used by special exception in the agricultural and general uses district A2, to amend section 607.02-10 to remove wood yards and to add section 607.02-24 for allowing wood yards in the general industrial district I1, and to add section 716 to establish regulations pertaining to wood yards be approved with the changes
Amended in the meeting.
amended in the meeting.
I second.
All right, we have a motion. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank y'all.
All right. That takes care of all the public hearings for today. We have for discussion, a couple of things coming up. Here's zoning text amendment, discussion of proposed art and musical cultural centers ordinance. And so the staff will review that.
That being Mr. Busso that's been pulled out of the office with Mr. Orson real quick. So let me.
All right, so we have been talking about cultural music centers. It's been spurred on by a recent public comment. So I just have a brief presentation here that I'll give. Per instructions from the last month's planning commission meeting, Mr. Pannenbaker and staff have researched surrounding localities as was instructed by the commission for similar uses. We thank Mr. Pannenbaker for his hard work. He definitely helped out with the research. I didn't provide you in the package with that research. I have provided a supplemental during this meeting, but I'm just going to quickly summarize that research that we've done. We've also adjusted the proposed definition changes presented last month to reflect that discussion. There was an issue with enclosed structures, and we've amended that, and we'll see that at the end of this presentation. So while many of the localities research had similar uses to the proposed amendment, they also all had additional restrictions which would not be equivalent. Most of the uses that we found similar were only applicable to specialty districts or business districts or non-agricultural districts. And of course, the proposed amendment here is for agricultural uses or in an agricultural district. The elephant and the horse is a proposed use in the agricultural transitional zoning district. And so we didn't find anything that in staff's opinion was very equivalent to that in an agricultural zoning district. That being said, there are a lot of uses that would be similar. The majority of surrounding localities seem to be geared more towards art galleries or museums, and then personal workshops or personal art studios. They never really merged the two in one particular use, which is kind of what we're gearing towards. Research uses seem to be catered more to museums, art galleries, personal art studios, or public buildings. The most similar uses applied only to non-agricultural zones. That being said, staff does feel that the proposed amendment could be consistent with a comprehensive plan, though the research in surrounding localities shows that it is a niche use. So here's the definition as it currently stands in the top in italics there. And then what was presented to you last meeting is listed below. The changes that we made is just a quick change in red here. We just added or its vicinity. So I'll just read it really quick, but the proposed amendment is as follows. Cultural Arts Center is a facility or group of facilities where a leasing fee or an admission fee is charged and groups of individuals gather for the purposes of participating in the creation of or enjoying arts and or crafts, either within an enclosed structure or its vicinity, and where art shows, craft shows, and classes/demonstrations may be held. And then 30256A, Cultural Music Center, a facility or a group of facilities where a leasing fee or an admission fee is charged and groups of individuals gather for the purpose of listening to or participating in live music conducting within an enclosed structure. There was talk at the last meeting of splitting out those uses, so we're going to continue to do that. There was discussion about having outdoor music, but it conflicts with other county codes, county ordinances, so we've left that definition the same. So I'll turn it back over to the chair for discussion, and we're here for questions.
Thank you for all the research and
Just to add on that, Mr. Busso, as always, did an excellent job. We do appreciate Mr. Pannenbaker's research. I think it was the following morning, he gave us some of the surrounding localities, or at least that same week. So in front of you, we did want to, explore it, review it prior to just sending you the information. So Mr. Musso, in a document in front of you, Cultural Art and Music Center Surrounding County, dated December 5th, 2021. We have some excerpts from Albemarle County, Augusta, Bedford, Botetourt, Roanoke, Rockingham, and Shenandoah. And that is in front of you. And then of course that same package of information in front of you has the revised cultural definitions for culture. It has the current definition of cultural music center, and then it has the proposed definitions of a cultural art center and a cultural music center. Again, we do feel, staff does feel that it's better to separate those. They're in our opinion, they're two separate uses, and it should be defined and permitted as two separate uses.
The only question is about this leasing fee or admission fee. I mean, if you have an art show, you're not charging people to come in to your barn for your art show. They're coming in and hopefully they're going to buy some art. is there a reason why we have to have an admission or leasing fee charge?
Certainly for the music, that was pertaining to the music, meaning
Yeah, I
that
see that. Yeah.
my concern, and it's sort of the same concern on a group of individuals gathering for the purpose of participating in creation or enjoying of arts. And so if you don't have that leasing fee or admission
I
fee,
I never pay an admission fee to go to a craft show. You know, I mean, you might have.
but the vendor has, the vendor has certainly
the vendor
paid a
has.
leasing fee for that, the ability to set up to allow the public to come in, I would assume.
Right, but I mean, if you haven't, again, I'm going back to, so I have a barn and I have art or I'm having a craft show that I set up with all the stuff that I've been making. Am I gonna charge people to come into my barn?
Well, you charge
my
people,
craft
you charge a vendor to come in to set up.
I'm saying if I did it.
But
If I
if you did
if
it
I
in
did
your
the
barn-
art, you know, it's all my stuff that I've created and I open it up. I don't know,
I don't think you would fall under a definition of it. Well, currently you would not fall under the definition of a cultural arts center in that case.
Okay.
I think is the answer.
But is it like if it's Melissa's barn and I'm gonna lease it? Is that what it,
Pay $1 and there's a
Absolutely.
leasing
Then
fee or
that
something like
would
It
fall
be.
under.
that's where it
yes.
falls under it?
That's-
Thinking about some people who bought some property out and they're gonna use the barn and paint and whatever, and they want to be able to have people come out and hopefully buy their art. They're not gonna charge them to come in and look at their art, you know?
Or is it where they have something they want to do an art and they charge admission fee?
And I'm just saying,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna charge them to come and look. at
Where
it.
Well, no, I'm
leasing
saying
fee-
Well,
do
I'm not even so
Admission.
sure, I'm not even so sure we want to make that a special exception.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's overextending one individual on, I mean, that on their own property, you know, opening it up,
It's
you
when you
know.
lease it, like if I lease it from Melissa.
Yes, then that is a different, in my opinion, then that is a different
different
use,
thing.
leasing. That's
Right.
correct.
So they'd have to come for a special exception in that case.
Be able to host, the owner
Because
would.
It's in an A2 or it's an A1 or whatever. Sorry, A2 district. Okay. Just want to get clarification.
Appreciate y'all adding the flexibility, enclosed structure in the first part or vicinity. Just had a question for the music. Would a tent be considered an enclosed structure?
Currently.
Like at a venue, a wedding, events venue?
Yeah, currently not. We've had that conversation in the past with individuals, I should say. And we do not consider a tent being an enclosed structure.
Okay, so where do we want to go here? Do we want to put this to
I think we send it on to Board of Supervisors.
supervisors? See if we
Well,
wanna go
no.
ahead, whether we want to put it for a public hearing. or
Yes,
not.
that's correct.
Next month.
Yeah, I think that's what we do is ask the staff to take it to the public hearing next month. as
And
it's
we do
written.
have some attendees for the next discussion, if you will. And I do notice we still have one gentleman online. So it may be appropriate to see if this gentleman's here for I believe for this particular discussion, if it may be appropriate to see if
Mr. Panamaker.
Okay, if somebody wants to make a comment, that's fine.
if anybody'd like to make a comment for this by no means is a bona fide public hearing, but we will accept public comments on this discussion. If you would like to raise your hand now via Zoom, please do so now. Not seeing any raised hands, I'll turn it over to the chair.
Okay,
I did just want to have that same opportunity
But do
for
we
a
need-
call.
do we need to make a motion to this to go to, or is that
It's
just
just
a
to direct the staff, ask
Instruction.
the staff to
Okay, instructed,
put that out for public.
so instructed.
And that would be to provide it. So one thing we have not talked about thus far is where this would be provided for. Obviously, the gentleman that's propelling this forward is in an agricultural transitional zone. It's currently allowed, I can tell you where it's currently allowed as far as a cultural music center, you know, cup your head. All right, so, but that would be the direction. We would need that direction as well, Ms. Huffman, correct?
Well-
Which district to provide it in?
I mean, which-
Yes.
Okay, so Yeah, and I would say wherever cultural music centers are permitted by special exception now, and I can confirm they are allowed in the they are allowed in the A2 zoning district, because that's where we have the, what propelled the original definition for it is an A2. So I think I can confirm. Yes. In the A2 zoning district, cultural music center as currently defined or used by special exception. And in the AT agricultural transitional zone, cultural music centers are used by special exception. I obviously don't think it would be appropriate in a residential zoning district, but as far as a business zoning district, it could certainly be appropriate in a business zoning district, in my opinion, as well. But it's not in there now, but it probably should be in a business zone. So it'd be, if I may make a recommendation, to be the A2, AT, and B1 zoning district. I would say permitted in B1 or used by special exception in all. That's a question.
I would think it'd be permitted in business. It's business.
Certainly, I agree.
What about A1?
A1 is currently not. Generally speaking, A1 and A2 do have similar uses, but the main difference between, one of the main differences between A1 and A2 is the grade. Generally speaking, when you get into the A1 district, you're talking about your more steeper mountain slopes, if that matters. And it is not a permitted use, nor currently it is not a permitted use nor a use by special exception in the A1 zoning district.
I think that's appropriate. Okay,
So define it and advertise it as a use by special exception in the A2, AT, and permitted use in the B1.
Right.
For a public
And-
hearing next month.
and with the changes, the definitions.
Yes.
Okay. All right. All right, we're moving on to the next one, also looking at a zoning text amendment, discussion of proposed change to the definition of a cottage industry. And this is not a public hearing, so we will hear from staff and any concerned citizens.
Yes, and so this discussion was generated from a citizen comment from Mr. Hart. Mr. Hart is in attendance this evening with some family members. With that being said, I do have a super brief PowerPoint presentation that essentially has well, let me show you. All right, at the last month, at the November meeting, Mr. Hart made comments during the citizen comment period about a proposed zoning text amendment. As you know, proposed zoning text amendments can be initiated by a motion of the Planning Commission or resolution by the Board of Supervisors. With that being said, it was an idea of a cottage industry of having a proposed zoning text amendment pertaining to cottage industries. And so based on the direction of the Planning Commission at the November meeting, staff has placed the discussion of proposed amendments on this agenda following, again, the public hearing given at last month's meeting. Cottage industries are currently a permitted use in all agricultural zones. That would be the A1, A2, and AT zoning district. They are not permitted in the residential zoning district. Home occupations are permitted. But the current definition of a cottage industry is an accessory use carried on by the occupant of a dwelling conducted either within a dwelling or accessory structure, or excuse me, accessory building, and meeting the following criteria: a small, non-polluting business or industry employing fewer than 5 workers and does not require the provisions of public services such as water or sewer service. The proposed change by Mr. Hart would include adding what's highlighted here, that the cottage industry would be a accessory use carried on by the occupant of the dwelling or by a member of the occupant's family. Won't bore you with the rest of the details or rest of the definition because they are verbatim the same as the current definition. So obviously what we're talking about is expanding the cottage industry definition to include not only the occupant of the dwelling, but also the occupant's family. And we can get into, we would obviously need to define what family is. I have the zoning ordinance, of course, with me, and I can tell you what family is per state law pertaining to subdivisions. There's a lot of state law pertaining to family subdivisions. That is aside from anything we're talking about, but it is a linear definition of family. With that, Mr. Hart does have, we've spoken with the chair and I've relayed this to Mr. Hart and the chair. He did have a PowerPoint presentation based on precedent. We did not feel like that the PowerPoint presentation was appropriate, but we would allow for public comment during this period. And I have given y'all of course, the PowerPoint presentation or Mr. Hart's talking points, if you will. So with that, I'd like to turn it back over to the chair or to the Planning Commission for further discussion.
Like to hear from Mr. Hart.
Yep, I think, yeah, we have some questions, so we'll hear from him and.
Thank you. I'm Steve Hart. All the really important questions in the world start with why. So why do I think this is important? USDA says that 70% of farmland will transition over the next 20 years. Jennifer Jones, who runs Generation Next, heard her presentation at the Farm Bureau Convention last week, said that 1 in 5 Virginia farms will be lost in generational transition. It will no longer be a farm. Multiply those together, we're going to lose 14% of our Virginia farms just in generational transition over the next 20 years. And this does not include the farms that we are currently losing, which are being converted to residential or high density uses. Found this quote actually on Monday when I was preparing this. Few things are more important to preserving local farms than creating a climate that allows for seamless transition between generations. And that's Joel Salatin. But I think Mr. Salatin is actually too narrow in this. It's not just about farms. It's about vibrant, functioning rural communities. We have to figure out how to move land, resources, and assets from the current generation to the future generation. And that's really why I'm here, what's driven this. We bought property here starting in 2012 when I retired from the Army. And we have a great provision here that allows us to do family subdivisions. Allows families to cooperate for the housing of the next generation. And ideally, what happens when I get old, I'll have one of the little houses and the kids will have one of the big houses. We actually get to trade on that. But when we do that, we run afoul of the cottage industry provision, because I have kids that used to live in my house that operated a cottage industry because they were an occupant of the house. Well, now they got their own 2 acres. It's still the same 145 acres that my family has owned. It's just they're on a different side of the legal boundary. Same building, same industry, same family, new line. That's all that's happened. I've got a picture in there I cut out of our GIS website, our family homesteads, total of 145 acres. We're one family. I have some of my children here and 2 of my daughters-in-law, and I can go home and get more if you need more, because there's more. One of my sons said that one time. We have 3 addresses. We currently have 5 tax parcels, and when the next kids get older for their 2 acres, we're going to end up with 2 more. There are currently 3 businesses that operate on those, plus the Cars Creek Community Market, and that's identified there on the picture. And that market provides customer access for another 10 or so farms and businesses that operate in Cars Creek. We run about $6,000 through that market every month. There's Cars Creek Volunteer Fire Department helipad, 3 of us are on the Cars Creek Volunteer Fire Department. We're about 25% of the active membership. And we've cut out an acre of our farm where we can land the helicopter and provide access for the department for that. We've had about, since we've done that, we've had about half a dozen medical evacuations have taken place off of our farm. We've got 2 houses. There'll be soon be 2 more houses. We've got a bunch of different shops. We've got some storage buildings, and we operate the farm there. I'm happy. We're getting close to actually making money on the farm. So why do I think this is positive? Because I don't want to stand up here and say, hey, we should do this because it's good for Steve Hart. Because I think that's a terrible way to do business. But I think this is good for a lot of members, a lot of families in our community. Particularly, you look at families that are currently multi-generational, they're probably doing this already, or families that desire to be multi-generational. Because you talk to parents, and what do they say about our kids? The kids grow up and leave. They grow up and leave because they can't live here. This provides for family economic cooperation. Family subdivision allows us to have family housing cooperation, but this allows families to cooperate economically. Rockbridge County is an expensive place to live if you're a young person. I currently work as a lead carpenter for one of our local construction companies. That's a lot more fun than teaching, and so that's what I'm doing. But it takes me 388 hours of labor to pay my county property taxes. That's 20% of my year. I've got the same job a young person could have. 20% of the year to pay taxes on this farm. Doing this allows us to maintain a rural landscape by sharing buildings. If we don't do this, every little division's got to pop up more buildings. That's an added economic impact to the young people that are trying to start their homes. And also really doesn't add to the rural area we look at. This provides for invisible industry. I mean, outbuildings are a normal part of farmland, and it's something that's really important in our farm. You know, when we built that market, if you come out and look at it, it's timber framed. It took us a long time to do it. We built the barn. We built a barn that looks like it was there 100 years ago. That's what we wanted to do. We wanted to build things that fit in with the landscape. And although this part of the farm is not on the tourism corridor overlay, we're cognizant of that. We don't want to build a McMansion. We want to build things that fit on the land. If you look at historic farm development over the past hundreds of years here, it happens because the next generation builds a house. The next generation doesn't build an entirely new farm. We're able to build a house and then leverage the resources on the existing farm. Economic development promotes community engagement. Like I said, 3 boys are in the National Guard. 3 of us are on the volunteer fire department. We do stuff here in the community. It helps build that vibrant community because I hadn't been there that long, but I talked to the people that grew up in Cars Creek. Talked to Cliff Hall. We used to have. There's a lot of that. And what we're trying to do is bring some of that back. Most importantly to me, this provides an economical way for our children to stay here on the incomes that are available here. On the incomes that are readily available for a young person graduating high school with or without a college degree to do that. It's also interesting when I look at the businesses that 2 of my sons run, they actually bring money into the county. Most of their clientele are somewhere else. So that money flows into our county, which then we get to tax, as opposed to many of our other industries here where the profits leave the county. And finally, you know, love John Wayne movies. The Comancheros, the judge stands up and says, we'd like to do this legal and honest, but since we can't, we're going to do it illegal and dishonest. And it's funny in a movie, but I got to tell you, I hate that. I absolutely detest workarounds and having to use a workaround because I think it really harms the fabric of our community. You know, our legal structures and the rules we have and the zoning and everything else really should enable us to live well here. And, you know, I'm the owner. I can always buy the business. It's legal. I'm allowed. I can do it. Same kids, same building, same business, same. It's just another level of bureaucracy. And I really don't think we should put our people through that. It ought to be easy for someone, a young person, 15 years old, start a business, grow up, build that business, turn 20, start a family, get 2 more acres, keep doing the same business in the same place. I learned in all the things I'm supposed to do, I'm supposed to talk about negative impacts whenever you talk about positive impacts. There's a possibility of abuse. There's always a possibility of abuse. The truth is I can't come up with how, because I don't think that way. I really try not to think about how to abuse things or work. I really want things to work right. I want the laws and the structures to enable things to work right. And hence my suggestion, and I'd be happy to answer your questions. And I think some of the other Mr. Harts might want to say something as well.
So one of the questions I had, I mean, I think this is pretty broad, like you said, by a member of the family, an occupant's family. I think we have to, it's going to take us a little bit of time, I think, to drill down and come up with a workaround, for that. Do they have to live on the property? Does it have to be contiguous? My other question is employing fewer than 5 workers. So if you have, 3 outbuildings on your property and one's doing, I don't know, whatever, three different cottage industries, are there going to be 5 people in each of those? Are they all going to be related to you? It can definitely be abused because somebody can have their cousins and their uncles and their aunts and everybody, So I think we have to come up with looking at what other communities are doing around us, other municipalities are doing, and make sure that we don't have people. There are people, unfortunately, that will come in and abuse it. It sounds like everything you're doing is going about it the right way, but I just don't know that it's going to be that way for everybody. So I think we have to look at that.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. If there's another Mr. Hart that would like to come speak.
And for discussion purposes, I would like to clarify on this particular page with showing the Hart family homestead, 1 family, 3 addresses, 5 tax parcels with more planned. They are 2 separate properties separated by about 1.5 miles, I think, as the bird flies. So this is somewhat of unusual situation where on the map on the left, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's 2 tax parcels, 1 2 acres in the house, and then 1 vacant land of 55 acres with the existing shop on it. That's where the Hart family lived and grew up, if you will, or since 2012. And so what has happened is that the Hart family, Mr. Hart and family have purchased another farm consisting, I think it was 88 acres. And so when we say 5 tax parcels with more planned, it is extremely important that everyone understands that 2 tax parcels are off Stillhouse Road and that the other 3 parcels are off 850 or the corner of 60 West and 850. With that being said, the issue at hand came up when
One thing relative to what you just said, the GIS boundary for the Stillhouse property is not correct. I've turned in the survey several years ago. So I actually I think the shop and the house are on 2 sets, 2 acres and not the other one. But there's part of my property is actually to the right of that land. And it was how it traded hands between Dr. Dick and Mr. Hodges that owned the 2 previous properties.
Okay.
Everything else you said is correct.
Okay. And so to further vet that idea, the family subdivision did not create this particular issue at hand as far as the operation of an existing cottage industry off of Stillhouse Road. I don't want to say the displacement, but the move created the issue at hand. And Mr. Hart is exactly right. We've talked about it. It was brought to our attention from a neighbor on Stillhouse, and we all know that. With that being said, we have had the discussion that it is an owner occupied a use conducted by the owner of the property, owner occupied, and it can employ 5 people. So Mr. Hart is exactly correct. He could change the LLC into his name. Currently, the LLC is in one of your son's names, I believe, and that son moved off of the Stillhouse Road property, but was continuing to operate a business out of the accessory structure. With that being said, that family member moved to the new farm, if you will, and continue to operate it under the cottage industry. Well, obviously that does not meet the definition of a cottage industry because it's not owner occupied, or, it's not, he does not reside on the property. With that being said, the family subdivision was after the fact on the 60 West parcel. So I do want to clarify that the 5 tax parcels, 2 of the 5 tax parcels, it's sort of the issue at hand, are not contiguous parcels. 3 of
That's what
those
the
are obviously
problem was.
contiguous parcels, meaning the proposed family, or these family subdivision, and then the farmhouse itself on West Midland Trail, 850 in this case.
Okay.
So I did want to clarify that.
Very good.
Yes, I think to everything.
Okay.
Okay, I think I concur with everything.
Does anybody else want to speak, and we'll just make sure we bring up new points, or rather than rehashing the same thing?
My name is Liam Hart. I am from Cars Creek, obviously Steve Hart's 4th son. I'm a member of the Rockbridge or Cars Creek Volunteer Fire Department and a member of the Virginia National Guard. With the way my father has had things set up, where I am allowed to live on his property and conduct my business out of his properties, I have been able to participate and provide for the community, such as being a volunteer firefighter, as well as serving the greater nation as a Virginia National Guardsman. If I had not had the economic stability that my father has provided me, I would not be able to do either of those things, as I would be working to keep myself employed here within Rockbridge County. But with help from my father in terms of lodging and in terms of being able to conduct business out of his properties, I've been able to live here and live here very well. I'm actually putting myself through college with no assistance from my father except through lodging. I'm going through debt-free. Obviously, there's help from the military, but going through debt-free could not have happened for me if my father had not been there with this cottage industry setup that we are trying to move along here. And there are many other factors within that, but this means a lot if done right. If we do, for those of us who do not intend to abuse the cottage industry and how it has functioned, this will mean a lot because it will allow us to continue making it easier for those of us who could not otherwise afford to live in Rockbridge County to live here. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, some compelling sentiments there. Looking at the other side, I can also see that you go a whole different other areas.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if you have in any of your materials the definition of immediate family. But I just pulled it from the code related to subdivisions. It would be a starting point, I think. But it's currently defined as natural or legally defined offspring, stepchild, spouse, sibling, grandchild, grandparent, or parent of the owner.
It gives us a
And to piggyback off that, and I honestly did not even realize this until we started preparing for this meeting. Under 302.75, we actually have a definition of family in the land development regulations. And that is one or more persons occupying a dwelling and living in a single housekeeping unit, as distinguished from persons occupying a boarding house, lodging house, or hotel as defined hereon. Private household workers employed and housed on the premise may be considered and included as occupying said premises. I think that's a fairly dated definition of a family, but weirdly enough, I literally was thumbing through this thing during the meeting and found the definition that's aside from the definition for family subdivisions.
Well, it sounds like it, basically you could take this and say, or by a member of the occupant's immediate family, and then right there shrinks it down to, stepchildren, children, grandparents, or parents, right? I mean, right there takes it away from cousins, aunts, uncles, and
The word family being defined, that you'd still have to adhere to that.
Yeah,
definition.
they'd have to be coordinated somehow.
We'd have to change that as well.
So there's a lot of moving parts here right now, and knowing the staff is going to be diminished.
Lost some research.
Well, and we have throughout the years, we have done research on cottage industries, and as you know, this was a community housing and block ordinance or some sort of organization through the Commonwealth of Virginia that had a model zoning ordinance, and that's what we adopted in Rockbridge County. With that being said, in our research on other localities that we can continue to do different research on other localities, but what we have found is while there are a lot of leftovers from this original 1970s zoning ordinance in other localities, such as home occupations was one of them that was fairly consistent throughout the board. What we have found is, and this does have to be fully vetted, but it seemed like the research we were doing that localities it was few and far between that allowed for cottage industries as we defined. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'd say most localities seem to be going away from cottage industries. In a
More to
whole,
home.
it's kind of an outdated practice.
More of a home occupancy.
More of a home occupation kind of thing, home office sort of thing.
we definitely need to look at it because, I mean, if you think about it, most kids, they don't want to live at home with their parents. You know, they may have a family business. We have a family business. You know, if we were building furniture or something like that, you know, the son may come over and, you know, be working on that, and they may be selling them, you know, all that. I mean, to me, it just seems
And
like,
that would work under the current ordinance unless the son or daughter obviously owned the business. So let's say.
right,
that-
well, right. So, I mean, in our situation, Austin now owns the business. So, you know what I'm saying? We have an office off-site, but I'm saying if we worked it out of my property that I live on with Pat, Austin actually is the owner now, and he lives in another house away. So if he, you know what I'm saying? If I had my office there, so it wouldn't work for him, you know, that wouldn't make any sense. So to me, I get that, you know, lots of kids live away and they want to come at home and work with their, thinking about Greg, you know, his son comes to his house and they do timber framing stuff at his property. They don't have a business per se, but you know what I'm saying? It's that same kind of thing. I mean, I think we do need to look at that. Because there are lots of family businesses, not just farming.
Again, you all have done, do you feel like you've done enough research?
Yeah.
I feel like,
That's a resounding no.
I mean,
This
you
was- this
were
was
saying
not-
we've been doing this research and
Full disclosure, this was not pertaining to this particular issue at hand. This was pertaining to a completely separate issue that we're sort of, you know, looking at other home occupations, cottage industries, not pertaining to this.
Our next step is to come up with a new or updated definition. Is that
Of
right? Of whatever we're gonna call a cottage industry or this home occupation, if we're gonna change it completely.
Well, I mean, home occupation is defined, and it's actually fairly well defined. There's a section of the ordinance that has a criteria on home occupations. With that being said, the same is not true for cottage industries. And so if it was the will of the commission, that would be the next step to research what other localities are doing pertaining to cottage industries and how they pertain to family members. And obviously my concern is we have a lot of concerns with home occupation. I'm sorry, we have a lot of concerns. It's not uncommon for us to have concerns for cottage industries. With that being said, this was propelled forward by a concern from a neighbor that he looked at the definition of cottage industry and felt the Hart operation across the street from or in the area was out of compliance because the son did, in this case, the son no longer lived on the property,
Right.
but rather came to the property to work and then went back home at the end of the day.
Mhm.
So with that being said, you know, at minimum, I would say well, at one suggestion would be an adjoining property you know, that, because you could get into the situation where the brother, the son, the daughter, you know, doesn't live anywhere in the area and wants to operate this business in an agricultural zone. And we see this very often with other localities where they can't get a business license in the locality they're in. So they come fishing to Rockbridge County and say, oh, well, you know, can I do this? And so then you get a business license, and then they could employ up to 5 people, where you start compounding that as an owner occupied. That's fairly liberal in my opinion. You start compounding that with owner occupied and owner's immediate family. Again, they don't even have to own the property. They just have to occupy it. And then their family, as we define one way or another, then can operate a business, a fairly intensive business in some cases, on that property. And it would not be limited to owner occupied. It would be unlimited to members of the family, regardless of where those members of the family live. If it's contiguous to the piece of property, if it's 1.5 miles away from the property, or you're 20 miles north, south, or truthfully, whatever miles north, south.
But ask what the business is that, business or businesses.
The different businesses. One son operates kind of a landscaping stump grinding business. One operates a crafting and metalwork business, traditional blacksmithing, and one operates a chair reseating service. So they are consistent with the definitions we've had of cottage industries. You know, my son that operates the blacksmith shop, I usually know he's present when I walk out the front of my house and see his truck. And so I'm standing there in the kitchen looking at the building, and I seldom hear the work he is doing.
The one we received concerns on was the woodsmith shop for arts and crafts, if I recall correctly. That was what the business license was for.
Yes, sir. That's the blacksmith.
Okay,
So it's ironwork and woodwork.
ironwork and work.
But you know, Chris, you mentioned about economic development. I mean, I read in the paper where the county gave Modine, I don't know how many thousands of dollars to create a few jobs. Every time I come to the Board of Supervisors meeting, we hear stuff talking about economic development. We need more economic development. The Board of Supervisors is going to spend a bunch of money to do a housing study to find out why people can't afford to live here. I volunteered to give them that information for free because I'm living this right now. I know why people cannot afford to live here. And I understand the concerns that Chris has. You know, you might think that we argue a lot. We're not friends. I hope not. I think we
No,
are
not
friends.
at all. No, sir.
We do, because both of us love this county. But we spend all this time talking about economic development. And the things we're talking about here are economic development that don't cost the county a dime. The county's never going to give me any money. The state's never going to give me any money. Our Commonwealth has decided that solar fields get exemptions from their sales and use tax. Nobody gives my sons exemptions for their sales and use tax. We pay our taxes, we bring our money here, we pay our business license, we're involved in the community, we're doing all the things that everybody says they want communities to do. And you know something? If somebody else wants to come to Rockbridge County on the land across from me and operate a business because they can't operate it somewhere else, and they're going to pay the county their $30 for their business license and their 12% or whatever it is for their income tax, I'm okay with that. Because we are never going to drag in a big company here to do business. We don't have the housing. We don't have the number of unemployed people. It doesn't seem to work in our county. But all these, the potential that the cottage industry brings for us is absolutely amazing, because all of that money stays here. And that is huge in economic development. I mean, you all know about the local multiplier effect and everything else. Money we got here stays here. And if people want to come here and bring business here and bring money here, I think that's a good thing. And the businesses that we're talking about are also small, right? They're individuals. People get to keep their stuff. Not a lot of big buildings, not the development that people are always arguing against. And so I just see this as a very good thing. I've talked to parents who have their kids here. I mean, Ms. Ennis, you mentioned your son now owns the business, right? That is absolutely essential. And as far as, owning and not owning, it's my goal to die a pauper. I could get hurt tomorrow and not be able to do anything, but still be alive. They need to own that business. They need to run that. And I will tell you the reason we are doing this, and I think you might find some other folks, again, families have been here for 5 generations have probably already been doing this. I want my kids to have their inheritance when they're 30. Not when I'm dead at 90 and they're 65 and they live somewhere else and nothing else goes here. The reason we have that second farm is all the kids live somewhere else and nobody wanted it. If the Harts hadn't bought that farm, you would have somebody else in here today with a subdivision plat wanting to put 27 houses on it. Because it's that kind of property. And if we can find ways to keep our families here and our kids here doing the things that come here, it's important. Because I'll throw this question out to you. That presentation you saw for that development earlier today, how many of those folks are going to join the South River Volunteer Fire Department? 0.
So if I just throw a wrench in the mix as the person who's leaving and doesn't have to do the research for this.
Great.
I just want to, looking past the obvious elephant in the room and what has propelled this forward, just thinking about, because this will be applied to the whole of the county, especially agricultural, which is like 90% of the county, which is where cottage industries are allowed. The biggest issue with adjoining landowners or letting family come to one parcel land, we have to think about future land use and what happens when that land no longer belongs to mom and dad or brother, sister, or whatever relation, grandfather. Then you just run into a multitude of issues of, well, now I don't have access to my cottage industry anymore because mom and dad.
I don't own the land. Then my descendants, either way, I'm free. My parents aren't going to, my children. But if I don't own the land, there's no longer a connection. So they have to inherit the land. Or
You have to move.
And so the way things are worded right now just kind of moves that portion of it of they have to move the cottage industry. It just, that's how it is right now. Is if you're not living there, just move your cottage industry. And that's kind of how it's designed right now. And so if thinking to what Mr. Hart would say is if the land no longer belongs in the family, then you have to move it. Well, it's you're just going a roundabout way of getting to the same result at that point. If I had to play devil's advocate, that's what I would argue. But just as a suggestion, it does seem to be an antiquated way of doing things as cottage industry. So given the manpower and the time, completely redoing the definition and completely redoing home occupations, and it would probably be the preferable route in my suggestion, but that would obviously not be possible at this time.
I think this is something that's going to take, I mean, how long did it take us to get wood yards?
Wood yards,
I mean,
yeah.
5 months. I mean, it's a long time.
We have, what, 4 or 5 other zoning text amendments on the table at the moment.
Yeah. Because when I do carpentry, I do timber framing. I don't like the term antiquated. That is not correct. I do not do old things. If you look at the way we farm, people like I say, oh, you do it old. No, I do it modern. I do it exceedingly modern. I take things that we have learned in the past, that they're absolutely the best things we have learned out of the past, and I figured out how to bring that forward into the 21st century. I am not interested in recreating the 19th century. I'm an amateur historian. I know what it was like. Professional engineer, my area of expertise is infrastructure. I understand a whole lot more about infrastructure than most folks in this country. And I can tell you why I-81's crowded. It's crowded for one very simple reason. We have built an economy where absolutely nothing is done right here. Everything in our economy moves. That's a modern way to do things. It didn't used to be crowded because we did things here. And that's an antiquated way of thinking things that needs to be brought forward. If we want to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, if we want to reduce our traffic on the road, people need to live.
Mr.
where
I'm
they
I'm
work.
going
Yes,
to
sir.
interrupt you right now because we want to
We all
stay
gotta go.
on focus on this and it is getting late. So thank you for your input. And so I think, with my leaving too, it's really what my colleagues here
I mean,
are.
I think we need to, when I say staff, I mean, Chris, I guess, it's gonna take some time. I know, because you don't have the manpower to help start trying to figure out what this definition or where we need to go with this, but I think we need to.
Start thinking about it and start looking at other localities as truthfully as time allows. And I'm certainly not saying that to get out of anything or put anything.
No, I
in the
think,
back burner
with the
by any
holidays
means.
and everything, that's not realistic to think you're gonna have something ready by January, whatever, 7th or whatever.
So to the hearts, be patient.
I'm good till midnight tonight, Lee, on your last
Hey.
meeting. If you want to keep going.
We can keep going till midnight if you want. We can filibuster, sure. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you, Family Heart for coming in and certainly giving us some compelling
Yes.
points
Appreciate that.
and information and thoughts. And
Certainly.
I will pass those
Appreciate
thoughts on
everybody's
to,
time.
we do appreciate everybody's time. Okay. So I get to say this one and last time. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Go ahead.
I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you so much.
Finally got to hit the gavel.